Welcome back, everybody, to the Next Level Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Leslie. Again, we have an amazing guest on my show today, John Valentine. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Big fan.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. We have been chatting before the show, and you will be able to get sneak peek of that material after, probably on a different podcast, so stay tuned. We had some really good banter. It's lots of fun. I want to introduce something a little bit different so you can see a little bit more of my personality and my guest personality, because sometimes when we put these headphones on and we have these mics in front of us, it can change the dynamic, and I really like to get a authentic and real experience for all of you listeners as best as I can. So some fun things coming up in the future. So as always, stay tuned. But today we've got some really great topics.
We do.
John and I have been preparing for this for a while, been bantering back and forth, getting to know each other a little bit, and all the little cool nuggets of information that we want to bring forward. John is very accomplished in his career. He is a world champion in Jiu-Jitsu. He became an MMA professional in his 30s.
30s, late in life.
That was late, yeah.
Yes.
He has a degree in molecular biology and organic chemistry. So he's smart as well as handsome and accomplished in his athletic career.
It's the lighting. It's your producer has really good lighting in here that makes it appear to be.
Yes,
such,
and
but
he
yeah.
has not seen me as a client in my med spa either, so I can't even take credit for any work that he's done. This is just au naturel.
No, it's not au naturel, but no, you're right.
Oh, okay.
You're right. No.
Those are some secrets you can
That's
tell
right.
us
That's right.
after the
That's right.
cameras
That's
go
right.
off. And he has a charity, so all the proceeds, right, from your fights, you've donated all your winnings to charities.
Randy
right?
Couture's Operation Knockout for the troops, yep, for our veterans, men and women in uniform. Absolutely, so it's great.
How long have you been involved in that charity?
Well, I've been donating all the money from the fights for about 10 years, and then this particular charity for 5 to 6 years, roughly. So it's been great.
So how much have you donated?
I've raised through grassroots effort just by me posting thirst traps. I'm joking. That was a joke. About $50,000 in the last 5 years. So arguably every fight I make about $10,000 in ticket sales, and that's just people seeing something that I post and then sending in money to the charity and then donating it. And then large scale. Most recently, last 2 years, we've had large scale corporate donations that have come through my name. As a whole, we're about $500,000 in, with about 10 years in. So,
Congratulations.
thank you. It's been really good to watch the men and women in uniform go to those events, all different branches, and sort of hang out together. Marines hanging out with Army people and celebrating and just having a really good night out for celebration for our troops.
Is that not normal that they
I think they do when they probably retire, but probably not when they're not. But it's just a great patriotic experience. You see people coming up asking veterans for their autographs, which you never see. We go into a restaurant, we see a star, a rapper or something, and we get their autograph. And then you see kids at these events asking veterans for their autograph. It's kind of a cool experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that is very cool.
And it's very cool. Yeah. Really exciting.
That's on my agenda, my charity, my foundation, what I
Great.
want to start contributing
Love to hear about
to.
it.
So it's in the process, among many other things. So I will be picking your brain more
Love
about
to hear
the
it.
charity on another podcast. We'll have you back.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about all
Love to hear about
things charity and how to help humanity and all the...
It's definitely a process. You start early and align with something that people believe in you, and then they become aligned with you. So
Absolutely. Mental health, as we had talked about before, it's very near and dear to my heart. You had worked in the drug rep industry, right? So you have some experience with those medications, selling them and understanding the research and everything, but you have some insights and perspectives on the stigma associated with mental illness.
yeah, I
Is that
think
right?
when in the 90s, like 1998, when I first started, the only thing that was available at that time, Zoloft wasn't out. So it was Prozac, Paxil, and Lexapro for like basic antidepressants. And our job in the industry back then, and I look back at my career back then, our job was to convince everyone, tell doctors that everyone was depressed, which created this mass stigma where everyone was depressed. You're a sad housewife, you're a sad husband, you're depressed, take these pills, which created, just an empathetic view of what mental health was about, and that's not what it was. And then the more I got into it, you realize that there was more to it than that. It was more than just being sad and being depressed, that these are real problems. I think it did pharmaceutical industry, for what it as evil as it may have seemed, did bring a light to that issue. But I think still to this day, after all these years of talking about it, people still don't want to admit they take medication, which is the craziest thing. We go, if I have a heart condition, I'll take heart medication. If I have a stomach issue, I'll take something for my stomach. But one of our, arguably our most important organ is the brain. But we won't do anything to treat it. Won't tell anybody we go to therapy. Won't tell anybody that we talk to anybody. Won't tell anybody that we're in a group. Won't tell anybody that we're taking medication, because of stigma, this weakness theory, when those are the strongest people, the people that actually face it head on. I'm sure you probably.
So you're pro medication for depression?
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'm pro medication along in combination with therapy. All the studies show that if you're just taking an antidepressant without doing some other things to fix some of the other problems, then your chance of success is less. But I think if you're understanding, if you as a person feel like you're suffering from mental illness, right, and we can call it what it is, it doesn't make it weak. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, whatever the case may be, getting help on the other aspects to deal with some of those other factors is important. But I believe that a lot of people have a stigma with themselves and embarrassment because they don't understand the biology behind it. They don't understand the same reason why your heart may beat faster and you need medication, your heart may beat slower. They don't understand how serotonin moves across and how it affects depression, and it's a chemical. It's not a will issue, it's not a weakness issue, it's a chemical issue that your body needs to have certain chemicals replaced to make you right. And I don't think, nothing against primary care doctors, they're overworked. They can't be all things, but they don't have the time to really sit down and explain what they're dealing with.
That's true. As a nurse practitioner, when I practiced in primary care, it was very difficult to have the time. I tried to make the time, especially when it came to mental health issues, because it was near and dear to my heart, and people really needed to know the dangers of the medication. So being on the prescriber side, there's black box warnings just say you could become suicidal, and people did. I saw, not often, but people got worse before they got better on some of these medications, just because we don't know how the chemistry in the brain is going to react. They're incredibly dangerous substances. So, and that's just the basic antidepressants, not the antipsychotics and everything that cause weight gain and all the other craziness that happens. And so, there is a definite need. People have these mental health issues. I really don't believe that we understand even the surface of what might be causing them. Yes, there's chemical imbalance. We know the neurotransmitters are involved, but how we treat is very inconsistent. There are herbs that can do the same thing, a better job without the side effects. Yes, people need counseling, they need therapy, they need to talk through their stuff. Interestingly, there is a guru, I won't name him specifically, very, very popular, who thinks that depression is just a will thing. It's a state of mind, a mood thing.
Even today's science and being able to measure that, huh?
Yes, still. With getting to the bottom of what's going on and just, changing your habits and your nutrition and all those sorts of things. And I was on that bandwagon thinking, I shouldn't say I was on the bandwagon, I'm going to correct myself. I wanted to believe that he was correct, because I have my own struggles that I go through, and I see them in my family, older than me and younger. And I wanted so much to believe that he was right, but having gone through what I've gone through, it isn't just a will it or a mindset or whatever. Like, I have my little tinctures and herbs that I take that really keep me going, keep my brain chemistry going, keeps me at peak performance, keeps my energy levels consistent. Mood is wonderful. Stuff you get over the counter. And I'm on a intensive vitamin and mineral regimen. So I don't necessarily disagree with medication.
It's a whole approach.
And there's different ways to approach it. Not one is right for everybody. For me, because I was a healthcare professional and saw the challenges people have gone through on it, they lose their libido, their sex drive is gone, they can sometimes feel numb. There are many bad effects to them, but some people do really, really well. So what is you said there are many other factors. There are other things to consider. What is it from your experience and your training from the eyes of, the pharmaceutical industry that could be maybe addressed, or what are some of the other
I think
aspects?
the holistic approach to the other stuff, and again, I'm in molecular diagnostics. I'm in oncology, so I'm in cancer now, and I am not knocking the industry that really brought awareness to mental health, and so I'm not knocking the industry. There's good pharma, bad pharma. Say what you want. That's a whole other show about whether pharmaceutical companies are evil or not. That's a whole other show.
True.
But I think the other part is there needs to be more of a holistic approach to talk about. You don't hear no commercials or no articles about all the other things, like you're talking about, the supplements, the vitamins, the meditation, the therapy work to peel back those layers, to create self-awareness when you're feeling certain ways. And so you don't hear about that. You only hear about, I want a pill. That's the way society is now. I want to take something. I want to be skinny. I want to be mentally sane. Whatever the case may be, you don't hear about that holistic approach because people are afraid because they don't think those two can intermingle. It's like two camps: the pharmaceutical industry, right, and then the other camps that go, screw that. You just need herbs, and also I believe there's a combination of both.
Yes.
But I'm interested from. I mean, obviously, I was on the other side, so I was calling on you guys as a rep,
and
as
I was
manager,
the ones giving those.
And I had 30
medications
seconds,
out.
and I'd be like, Dr. Leslie, I'd like to talk to you today about antidepressants. Do you have any patients in your practice today that suffer or come in that complaining of mood changes? Sure, of course you do.
Yeah,
right. So that whole bait and switch. So I'm interested for you. Where does this viewpoint from the patients where the stigma comes that they don't want to take anything? From your viewpoint,
it's not even that they don't want to take anything. It's getting them to admit they have a problem. It's like the 12-step program, right? In AA, you have to admit you have a problem before you can get any treatment. So what I would do in my practice is have everyone fill out a depression screening tool. It was just standard. Everyone got it every single visit. Didn't care if you were here 1,000 times or you come every week for whatever. You fill it out. I was not going to miss it. Both my master's and my doctoral degree research was on depression. So it was discreet. They would fill it out and they would put it in the little packet and that would be done. So a lot more people, I screened so many. If I found people that were challenged, maybe not had major depressive disorder based off of the DSM criteria, but definitely people have mental health issues. And at least it opens the door for a conversation. Okay, try this, try that. Do you meet criteria? Do we need a referral? So I just deal with it head on. I talk about it on my podcast. It's just about more and more people being open about it and sharing. And it doesn't, stigma is so rampant and common, but I think even post-pandemic it's becoming more, people are becoming much more comfortable talking about it.
Do you think the stigma is more what people make up in their minds, or do you think there's an actual stigma? Meaning, if you tell me that you're on an antidepressant, do you believe that it's rampant that I'm going to judge you, or do you think it's more in the minds of the people that are on it?
It's a self-judgment, I think. They don't even want to admit that they're having to take something. And that's why people go on and off medication. Like, oh, I'm on the medication. I feel better. I'm going to come off of it, because they don't want to accept that they have something wrong with them. And wrong with them is it like we don't even fully understand the mechanism. Like, yes, we know neurotransmitters, but what is it that's throwing that off? Is it our constant exposure to, life stress? Like, they don't have depression here like they do in other countries that have low, they're not expected to make certain incomes. They're not keeping up the Joneses. Like, what is it that's throwing off the chemicals? You talk about epigenetics, that's a whole other thing. That is a big piece to mental health issues. So
a lot of dietary stuff in there, I'm sure you could argue about.
Dietary, stress.
Hormones, all that, chemicals, and foods and all that.
Absolutely. It's everything. So we could go and talk about mental health.
Well, I applaud you for attacking it head on still when most people are sweeping it under the rug because it's not a cute topic to talk about. But I'm sure you've spent, I spent many here locally, just at some of the major facilities, and when you see stuff unfold, and it affects everyone, not just people who don't have a pocketbook. It affects people with a big pocketbook.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about the people with the the low pocketbook. I was just in LA this past weekend. And boy, the homeless population, and they're not kidding when they say that, I don't know what the statistic is anymore. It's upwards beyond 70% of the population that's homeless have mental health problems. And I took many different recordings just because I'm fascinated by human behavior and this issue. The guy outside my window, I'm looking at the balcony, he's like living by the ocean, and he's talking to himself and he's yelling at people across the street. And at nighttime I'm walking, and they're everywhere, right? They don't hurt anybody, but I met apparently the King of England.
That's great.
King of England sleeps on the street of Santa Monica. So
how crazy would it be in an alternative universe if he actually was a King of England? But,
right. And I don't treat them any differently. I mean, I have so much compassion for them, but that's again such a challenge that we have. They don't want to get help. They're on and off their medications. And if they don't want something better for themselves, how can they get better? And this is actually a perfect segue into the next topic. We were talking a little bit about wanting to discuss a champion mindset, and you talked about predictable outcomes and routines. So when, people need to, or they want to get better, some people don't want to get better. And mental illness stops us from achieving our highest potential. Like, how do we know that man who was the King of England, he thought he was the King of England, didn't have some incredible gift or talent or ability, his purpose for being here on the planet? And his mental illness is stopping him from being able to achieve that. That is what saddens me. That's what hurts me, because I really believe every single person has some gift to bring. And maybe his gift is to bring awareness, mental health, or whatever. You can really, break it apart. But it challenges me to see people not able to achieve their highest potential because their mental illness holds them back. And that was me in the first part of my life, the first 36 years of my life. Yeah. I was pretty much, I don't want to say debilitated. To me, it felt that way. I was very accomplished, doctoral degree and all the things, but I didn't have the quality of life. I didn't have the successes. I made many, many mistakes that have had consequences in my life because I was disempowered, because I was weak, because I was anxious, because I didn't create the infrastructure from my anxiety, my tendency towards depression, the obsessive compulsive tendencies in my life. And I did not stand for it when I became aware. I said, no, I'm not going to allow this to inhibit me from what I knew I needed to be when I was 5. And I just changed it. I'm not the majority.
It's good inner child work, by the way.
Tons.
Right.
And beyond. But most people don't have that ability to just make that change. So what is your perspective on, or what was your routine? What were your, we talked about routine and predictable outcomes. How do you see that in terms of mental health and mindset and kind of putting it all together so we can maximize our success?
I would say, and I actually thought, I haven't really spoken about this until today on the drive over, but I was thinking about, I knew this was going to be one of our topics, right? And I was thinking about what changed in 2017 that got me to win a world title, and then how was that any different than the other 17 years that I chased it, right? And I think, and we're going to talk later about friends and honesty, accountability with oneself. Mm-hmm. And I would say for the early part of my career, I was satisfied with just the flashy parts. I'd win a competition or something like that. Then I had this great self-validation, right? But I wasn't really doing any work. I was just I was at this level, but to be at this level, you get to a different person. For me, I think that the big difference for me in 2017 is I kind of reverse engineered how I looked at what I wanted. And every year leading up until 2017, my only loss was in 2016. And it was a horrific loss. I mean, I was in the hospital. It was my only loss. And at that point, I stopped being scared because I survived one of the most horrific. I was in the hospital for, my face was mangled and all that stuff. And I stopped being scared coming out of that MMA fight. And I said, this year's going to be different. I think the easiest way to say this is I looked at things different. Most people most people set out and go, I want to win a fitness competition, right? I want to run a triathlon and I want to place in the top 10, right? I want to start a podcast. I want to win a jiu-jitsu competition. For me, and everybody's different, it's the exact wrong formula. So the formula for me was I had to believe in myself at a certain level to where I believed I could accomplish any of those things, and then I set the goal. If you set the goal and you still don't believe in yourself, you're never going to achieve the goal. So if I set the goal that I'm just making this up, I'm going to be a fitness competitor, but I don't believe I have a good body and I have body dysmorphia, well, guess what? You're probably never going to be a fitness competitor. If I had this overwhelming fear of talking to people, I'm probably never going to start a podcast. Mm-hmm. So you have to fix those pieces about yourself, self-doubt and the self-work, then set the goals on things. Now, I'm not saying don't in the back of your mind set that, but just don't set that goal and I'm going to go after it. Well, if you've never publicly spoke, you're gonna try it. You're gonna do one episode at home and you're gonna quit. Mm-hmm. You go, this isn't for me. So do the work on yourself first. So that year, I just got tired. I looked at everything holistically. I retired and I said, I want to win a world title. And I did honest work with myself, honest work with my routines, honest work with what I was telling myself, honest work with accountability for my routines and things I was doing, listening to people, getting the right coaches, honest work with what my commitment was, my diet, all that stuff. And then what were the reasons I didn't? I remember being terrified every time I step on the mat. Now, I still get nervous. I still get nervous when I step in the cage, but I'm not terrified anymore because I did that work to address the fear. And the fear was inadequacy. Well, of course you're not enough. You haven't put in any work. The reason I was scared every time I step on the mat at the Pan Am Games or the World Championships or the national level, because I didn't do the work. I wasn't scared. Do the work, you won't be scared. So for me, I just look at it differently. When I'm whole, I'm confident, I'm healthy, I put in the work, I've done the routines, and I've set that goal. Then you'll accomplish it. If not, you're just going to spin your wheels and you'll quit.
Wow, that's such valuable
I don't know
insight.
if this may not be for everybody. It's just for me. So.
No, I think that is for everybody. I like that you're reverse engineering. Most people do say, we'll set a goal and then you do whatever. And I really like that you sort of reverse the emphasis and say, okay, this is what you aspire to, but you need to really focus on the work that needs to be done, like the infrastructure, because I think it also saves you time. And I'm all about efficiency and efficacy.
Sure.
Like I want to get to, from A to B as efficiently, effectively, and with the most practical, easy, brainless manner. Like I just don't want to complicate life. I want to make life as happy as possible. And it's challenging enough as it is.
Yeah.
So I really do like that you were really focusing on that foundation, because I've seen many, many people that have this perspective. Okay, I'm going to get to that goal. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And again, same guru who has the perspective about depression says you just, change your approach, If it doesn't work, change your approach. It doesn't work, change your approach. How about we don't just keep trialing and error, because that's what that says to me, trial and error. How about we take a step back and we prepare ourselves for success instead of just, focusing on keep trying. Yes, you want to take educated trials, but that was not the focus. We want to be very methodical and strategic. So
I don't remember what episode. I think it was episode, correct me if I'm wrong, it might have been episode 6 or something. You were having a banter with the gentleman who owns the studio.
Yes.
And you said he was giving you a little hard time about this idea of willing something.
Yeah.
Right? So I remember thinking about that episode too when I was coming over. And really what you're saying is willing it is saying, I believe I can do it. But that is, to me, that was like the starting point of what I was talking about. What you're basically saying, I'm putting myself in a position where I have to do work. I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm vulnerable, where I'm going to ask, if you were my close friend, be like, well, you're not winning because of these reasons. But nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to be vulnerable. Nobody wants to admit they're not working hard. Mm-hmm. But I think he was giving you a little bit of a hard time, but I took away from that episode that you were basically saying, I'm going to will this because I believe I can do it. I see it. Mm-hmm. but there's so much before that. You weren't just saying, I'm going to think about it and it's going to show. I'm going to rub a genie. You were saying, I'm willing it, but then I'm going to work backwards and go, what do I need to do self-work? And then it'll take. I'm assuming that's what
Yes,
you were.
that's exactly it. So some people, they think manifestation, or when they think what people mean about manifestation is just willing, and dreaming and visualizing. That's an incomplete definition. True manifestation is a whole process, like the remap process I created. It's a process. You don't just reflect and then you will it and then you're like, okay, I'm not going to do anything. Action is an integral part to. We cannot deny action. So, but there is so much preparation. It's just, there's a saying somewhere, and I'll butcher it, so I'm not even going to attempt it. But when you want to prepare, like carve a turkey, let's say, you're not going to use a dull knife, right? You have to sharpen it. It takes time to sharpen it. It takes time to cook. You have to prepare for that one perfect slice, right? So it's the same with a championship or whatever you put your mind to accomplish a big goal. There is an enormous amount of preparation. And in that, it comes the visualization, the intent, the wanting of that goal. But then that reflective process, like you said, okay, what are my weaknesses? What are my drawbacks? Like, kudos to you for being able to identify what your fears were and really kind of tackle those. I mean, that is valuable. So many people do this trial and error thing. Well, so-and-so did this, and that's that approach and whatever. And it's like they're skimming the surface. They're never going to get there until they really step back and say, what the fuck is going on with me? What do I need to change to put myself in the place to actually get that? And so some people are very good at reflecting with themselves. Other people use self-help books or whatever. Some people need outside.
Most of us are not honest, and it's hard.
Right.
It's still.
So how are you honest with yourself?
I still battle with it every day, right? You get caught up in, and I don't mean ego in the sense of over other people, but ego in the sense of protection, that it's uncomfortable to be uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to think you're not good enough. It's uncomfortable to think.
It's a slippery slope because you can start beating yourself up, and we don't want to do that. Yeah. So what do you do? Do you have someone, trusted confidants that can
We're going to get to it, I know, later. I'm sure I'm going to probably lose a lot of fans or friends who on this theory about the theory of feedback. I have a very strict theory of feedback.
Can you share?
Sure, but it has to go with. I'd love to share with it. We're going to get to that, but the topic was really just being honest with yourself and being accountable, but not beating yourself up and being grounded, and surrounding yourself with surround yourself with 4 quarters and not 100 pennies. You can have 100 friends, right? And I got 100 followers on Facebook, but no one give a shit. Then you're not going to get any calls on your birthday, right?
Right.
Or I have 4 friends that I can count on that are your biggest friends, advocates. They're honest people. In my sport, it's usually your coaches. They tell you you're not putting in work, or your significant other, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever who loves you enough to not be cruel, be specific, and all this stuff. But yeah, I battle with it every single day of being, that theory of inner child work, right? So you stick that picture, you know what I'm referring to? Stick that picture for your listeners. You stick that picture of yourself when you were 8 or 9. You tape it to your mirror every morning. And when you wake up with self-doubt, you look at that picture and go, you have to explain to this kid that he can't do that, right? And that's the things you're telling him. I can't get this job. I can't accomplish this goal and all that. So you look at that picture and you're like, well, I can't say that to that kid because that kid's you, right? So you have to remind yourself that what you're feeling is not real. That for me has been the biggest battle. Is what am I experiencing real, or is it just self-doubt? Some of it's real. Not training, that's real. Training but failing and don't thinking you're good enough to enter in a competition, that's self-doubt, right? But they're both real. But the theory of feedback, so that's the one that my friends are probably tired of hearing about. And some of it I've used in the past incorrectly for me when I don't want to hear feedback from someone, right?
Yeah.
So
you don't like getting feedback, or you're very specific about how you want your feedback. You want to share?
Yes. So I think with time we were taught as children, in young adolescence, we were taught that the theory is feedback is a gift. I also think it can be a curse, right? So I believe we're taught one direction of that. Take feedback, listen to it, own it, and whatever. And it's a gift. If somebody gives it to you, take it. I think that's bullshit. I think a lot of feedback. So I have 3 rules of feedback. You got to either be, these are the 3. You don't got to subscribe to them. You got to be an expert in your field. Okay? You have to be a trusted member, right? You got to be a trusted member of my circle, or I have to believe that if you're not a trusted member of my circle, your motive is to truly help me. Okay? So if I just met you and I said, hey, Dr. you don't know me, right? Very well. If I just met you and I'm trying to give you feedback on your podcast, you'd be like, what the fuck? You don't even, bro.
Who are you?
Like, bro, you've never had a podcast.
Bro, who are you?
Like, your headphones are used for gaming. Like, what the fuck are you going to, like, seriously. So you're going to be, that's an example where I'm not an expert in my field. I'm not a trusted member of your circle. And
Did I ask you?
Right. So, no, the other part is permission, right?
Right.
So did I give you permission?
Did I ask you for your advice, John?
Did I give you permission? Are you a trusted member of my circle? And I know you can't hurt me. Or are you an expert in your field? Now, look, if I'm an oncologist and you don't want to hear it, and I'm like, this is what's going on, you'd be like, well, fuck, he's an oncologist. Right?
Yeah.
So those three things, and people have a really hard time, and they're like, you're just not open. I am open, but the feedback isn't balanced with a sense of, I want you to do well. It's like, hey, you shouldn't do that, or why do you work out so much? Whatever the case may be, just take any topic. So I'm not shut down to it. I just ask I'm very cautious on people. I'm always wary of people who offer feedback unsolicited, and you know who they are.
Yeah.
So the relatives, why everyone's got an opinion on, and it's interesting. It's like they're projecting, not always, but they're projecting their need to be heard, their insecurities of not being heard. Maybe they need validation, whatever the case is, and the way they get it is through giving other people feedback.
You're absolutely right. It's advice. It's very interesting you say that. And actually, it's also a boundary thing. So firstly, I want to say I completely...
You're teaching people, and sorry, Dr. Leslie, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm teaching people, the boundary thing to me makes my relationships more beautiful. If that really annoys me, and I say, well, this is my boundary, here's things, right? And you don't say, nobody ever says, these are my boundaries. Nobody ever say that. But if people know that you communicate that those are important to you, and they're not just going to be able to offer you a piece of shit feedback with those action steps, and they're not going to give it to you, which is good. But you're setting your boundary that I want your feedback, but give me some action steps, give me some context, give me some
You're
things.
Absolutely allowed as a human being to, especially someone who's ambitious and has a goal, to have your requirements of how you want to receive feedback. You are successful. Even before you became a success, you still said, okay, this is what resonates with me. I want these three things in someone to give me feedback. And I actually agree completely with you. The expert thing, plus or minus depending.
The other caveat is if it affects you. So if I had coffee with you and I said something that pissed you off, right, and you gave me feedback on that, that's different.
Of course.
Because I've done something that's affected your well-being, your mental, something that made you mad, something that made you, that's different.
Sure.
You're allowed as a person to go, whether you accept this or not, don't do that again, that pissed me off. And I have to accept that.
Yeah, of course. No, I actually am right on the same page with you. I have my select people that I will go to actually for particular issues because I know that's their, or questions or inquiries, because I know it's more their expertise. They may not be a full expert, but they have some experience in it. I trust them. It sounds good. I usually still do cross-check, even if they meet all of those criteria, because I'm just want to make sure that it makes sense. I might cross-check with one of my other experts or friends or whatever. But I totally agree too with the boundaries. Like, we talked about boundaries. I had a boundary with you. Remember?
There's probably a lot of them.
Do you remember the boundary? We had a conversation about this when you texted me or called, and what did I say?
You were meditating, and I called you. I was in.
And what happened? Tell the story. Irvine. Tell the listeners the story about the boundary I had with you.
I was in Irvine, and we were trying to solidify the date or the studio. We were trying to solidify some specifics of meeting. So I called you in between meetings because it's all about me, right? Because that's what guys do. It's all about them. Mm-hmm. So in between meetings, and then I called, and you were very short. You're like, yep. Mm-hmm. You weren't rude. You're like, I'm meditating. I have to go. And you stayed for a second, so you didn't hang up on me. You didn't do anything like that. I got the phone. I'm like, what a bitch. It's like, son of a bitch.
Did you guys hear that?
I said, what?
He called me a bitch.
I said, what a bitch. seriously, like I'm taking time out of my, and then I went, but it was an example
The
of
ego, the male ego rage.
The male ego rage.
For how long? How long did it rage
About
for?
3 minutes.
Oh, that's a long time.
No, not
wow, I
raging. It wasn't
got that
raging.
reaction.
No, it wasn't raging. It was like the bitch comment happened the first 10 seconds, and after that, it was just reflection. I'm like, yeah, I got it, and I got to the whole meditation piece, and then I think you talked about in some of your other episodes too as well that is a consistent part of your life that puts you closer to where you want to be, like waking up in the morning and doing your morning devotionals or whatever it is that you do, morning meditation, your prayer, listening to music, not answering or getting off social media every night at 9 o'clock so you can, whatever it is, it's your ritual that puts you in a place to be the best version of yourself. So when I saw that, I wasn't mad anymore. And and by the way, I'm blowing up to be a little bit bigger than I was. It wasn't like I was kicking over chairs at the Marriott, but I was just like,
oh, come on. You're stealing the whole cool idea that I got under your skin that bad.
I was just like, what the fuck? I think I said, what the fuck?
What a bitch. Oh my God.
That's right.
No, but we had a nice conversation about boundaries and the importance of them. And boundaries are like doors. You can have a boundary as you get to know somebody. Certain boundaries, like my meditation, are pretty firm depending on the day. That is my no-go time. Like I don't want to be disrupted. My fault if I didn't have my phone on focus mode or whatever. But boundaries with people as they prove themselves or whatever, they can be doors, and they can get to I see it as like a circle, like a target, right? You have people in different circles that are closest to you, and you are the very center. We are the center of our own universe. And then there are like these little doors that can open, and people can come into different levels of boundaries, right? So they're very fluid. You don't have to just keep them solid. They can change and morph. That's how I like to see them.
It was just interesting. It just showed, it goes back to the idea of routine. The reason probably you've been successful in your podcast and in your career and those things and your work and balancing all those things is you can't survive and be successful in anything unless you have some level of routine and things that are important to you, or nothing's important to you.
Yeah, and so you called me a bitch, but I could call you a bitch back because you're sitting here talking to us all about accountability.
Oh, here it comes.
And we had a date for our podcast, right?
Did we? I don't remember.
We did, sure.
I don't remember.
And I was calling to confirm the podcast. I'm like, yeah, I'll see you at the studio. No, I didn't write it in my calendar or some bullshit like that, right? So how accountable were you, John? Let's go into this whole
scale of 1 to 10. That was like I think I probably would have been a level 4 until I gave you the reason why. So
and what was the reason why? You want to share what your reason was?
I double booked, and then I flew to California, and I was double booked, but accountability, it went from a 3 to a level 1. 1 because I made an excuse. And 2, people always prioritize those things that are important. So, and it was important to me, and that's why I was super pissed. And I think I sent you like a book, a thing about accountability, and I'm like, I'm so But the fact I made an excuse, I even felt worse after that. I'm like, I should have just said I missed it.
Yeah.
I made a fatal flaw, but then writing a book about why I missed it just makes you less accountable. But nobody gives a shit why you just fucking own up to it and move on. Yeah. But yeah.
And it's okay. We had a good laugh about it. I'm like, oh, I'm so going to bust your balls about it on the show, about accountability.
Yeah, but
you're so successful and you created all this success in your life and you blew it with my first podcast with you.
But then you gotta peel back some layers and go, if that happened at your level on a podcast that I wanted to be a part of with you, like how many other people are getting slighted on accountability, I just recently started, like when you do your to-do list and stuff like that, I think I talked about it in some of my posts, but I look at my to-do list and I make sure it's balanced with work and then personal stuff, pay these bills, those things. But now I'm actually adding in personal time with friends. I'm actually writing it down on those things. And before I never did. And then you have friends you haven't seen in 6 months, right? It should be, and now I have a regular rotation with the friends that matter most for a weekly standing lunch and dinners and those things. And we prioritize that which is important, and probably every ex-girlfriend or boyfriend told us that same thing, right? We get too busy, but if I was important, then you'd prioritize me, you'd include me, and they're absolutely right. So,
but sometimes, and we have to cut ourselves slack here, because yes, it's being responsible, but sometimes we don't always have the skill set. So, I mean, I suppose, accountability is responsibility. Responsibility to yourself, to your organization. Like, I have been infamous for overbooking myself. And that is a problem, because then I end up getting too stressed out, running ragged, being late. That's not cool for anybody, right? And
You probably peel back some layers on why you do it. I'm sure. To stay busy, for a sense of, I don't know, for me, it's always a sense of, the busier I am, the perception was that I was more successful. And I feel, and we'll talk about why guys run. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that.
The busier I am, though, I feel the busier I am, then it gives me the perception that I'm accomplishing things, and I can't just sit and enjoy a TV show or something. You double book and triple book yourself. So
that's exactly right. So I went through a very calm, transformative several years where I was idle against my will. Every time I tried to make some movement forward, I was just blocked. And it was all part of my learning experience of what I needed to accomplish. And so once I was finally released of this sort of limbo, it really did feel like I was this caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, right? But I was very consciously aware that I was melting and developing wings, but it was very frustrating at the same time. And so once I was able to fly, I wanted to just fly, and I wanted to go, go, go. But not realizing until I became aware that it was that kind of, spinning the wheels, burning myself out, not getting things done in the quality way that I wanted to. And I just didn't like that. That's not who I was. I didn't want to have to cancel or show up late. And it was just kind of like, okay, there has to be a balance here. You have to be able to prioritize, yes, your success and the things you want to do, but you have to have enough time to honor yourself in the day-to-day. Like, there were times when I would be so busy, like back to back, I didn't have time to do my laundry. I'm like, oh yeah, did I shower today? Oh my God.
No.
So no, I did
Right.
not shower.
Right.
I'm like, oh, that's what that smell is.
That's
It's
right.
me. No,
That's
not
right.
really.
No.
But, it's like, I'm so tired, I can't get this done, or like the basic things. And so, yes, I was absolutely there too, which is why I take so much time now in my downtime. Like, I'm very much prioritizing my meditation and taking time for creative endeavors and reading. I miss reading. I used to do so much of that, and contemplation, and
How much of your day is spent for you versus other people? I'm just saying, on an average day, we wake up, you have 12 hours of daylight hours of what time you wake up and time you go to bed. Let's just say it's 8 to 8 or whatever.
Well, I feel like my whole life is about me. Like, I don't do things for other people. And I don't mean that in a egotistical way. I mean, everything that I do is intentional. I have intention for everything that I do that is building towards my greater plan for myself, for my purpose in life, because I'm very, very much aware of that. And so everything I do is geared towards that. But in terms of maybe what you're saying is the downtime, like the balance time where I'm not doing, I'm being, I'm enjoying. Most days, probably not as much as I would like to. I dance a lot, which is actually part of my me time, but it's
Your tango.
my tango is amazing. It's so great for the brain. There's so much research that supports its decreasing severity in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. It's very good for cognitive function, but tons of things. So it's not just an amazing outlet for me. It's actually very good for my brain, considering I have, mental illness in my family. My brain has that tendency towards it. And people, as we're digressing here, people with depression who are untreated actually have a much, much higher likelihood of developing Alzheimer's disease. So knowing there's that tendency in my family, I'm doing everything now that I know of to prevent
Busy brain
that.
is a healthy brain.
Absolutely. If without your health, particularly brain health, well, you're the homeless guy on the street who thinks he's king of the world.
That's right.
That's right. So
So it's interesting. So the whole, And I'm sure you're talking about a top line, but there's a weaving fabric of everybody else, that your sense of purpose and all that. So people are weaved into that 12 hours. But
They are, but I can't, to answer your question, I can't really put a number on it. It fluctuates day to day. I'm very ambitious. I'm full of like this vital life force to be doing. I get so much enjoyment, and there's a lot of balance in my productivity. I've just been able to dial it down a bit where I'm not running late. I'm not overbooking, but still the majority of my day is.
Do you write down lunch with friends, dinner with friends? Do you write down your book?
I write it in my calendar, everything.
Good.
Or else I will forget. My memory is shit. That's the other thing
yeah.
that really sucks.
But in terms of priority, like this is a priority, so it's going on the calendar.
Yes.
In pencil or in pen?
In my phone.
Okay, I write it down. And
I used to have like a book that I would carry with me, and I'd have two places. But usually I put it in my calendar because that's like the one
I screwed
place.
it up. I wrote it on the book and didn't put it in my phone. So that just took me
one
my
place.
accountability to a zero, because that was another excuse. So I apologize. I own it.
You're forgiven, my child. You're forgiven.
Okay. Don't do that shit again.
Okay, exactly.
For all future guests, don't do that shit again. Okay. That's right.
So we have a little bit of time left. I want to try and get into some relationship stuff. So why do men run? All of the ladies out there listening want to know, why do they do this?
Why men run. Okay.
From relationships. You have 30 seconds. Go, John.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different reasons. I think if the guy's completely normal and he hasn't had any, let's just say, major traumas,
which is zero,
right?
Zero men.
Mine's based more on childhood stuff, but I would say if a guy's normal, a lot of times it's ego. So a guy who's used to, so I said guy, not a man, because men don't, that's a guy thing.
That's great. That's like that's Freud right there.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. A guy who is not used to having an equal. A lot of guys get into relationships. Not me, but a lot of guys will get into a relationship with a beautiful, successful woman, right? And maybe they're an attorney, maybe they're not, maybe they are whatever they are, and then they realize really quickly the reason this person's beautiful and successful is because they're driven. They have a thought. They have all of these
Ladies
things.
do have those things.
They do. It's holding me accountable. And they don't have the communication skills or the intellect or the ego capacity to be able to fight that. And they don't know how to overcome that feeling, right? You see it all the time with a guy, he just can't deal with the fact his wife, girlfriend, or whoever makes more money. They can't wrap their mind around that, because that's how, in 1965 we weren't raised, right? So they just can't wrap their mind around the machismo of she's powerful, she's successful. Oh, and by the way, she doesn't need me, right? She wants me. So then it's easier for a guy to go to find someone who is beautiful but has less things to say. And I'm not being degrading, but they'll run for those reasons. I think that's one reason.
Okay. So you said need and want. So guys want to be needed, not wanted?
We're really easy to figure out. We're really super easy to figure out. Half the time we know we're being led, coached, and we don't really care. We want moments in time. We want to have, Chris Rock want the biggest piece of chicken at the dinner table, whatever it is. But we know we want to give, we want to be submissive and give away power and that stuff. We just want moments where we feel like a man. I think if a man, that's an ego thing, but a guy wants to feel like a guy.
How does a woman make a man feel like a man or a guy?
I think part of that too is that boundary piece, right? I'm going to be the strong woman, but that means that I'm going to be strong for you when you're the weakest, right? And if a guy understands she's not just being this way, and it's just communication. And but I think a lot of guys will run because they'll say she's a feminist, or doesn't want to be with a guy, or she has no time for men, or she hates men, or whatever. It's all the storytelling that a guy will tell himself versus just saying, actually, no, I just don't have the intellectual capacity to accept someone who's my equal. Mm-hmm. Right.
So I want to ask you about this, because I was having a conversation with one of my girlfriends who's having relationship problems and gone on the dating hamster wheel and the whole thing. And I've had my share of fugazi men, which are...
And this is not putting out the stuff like the other stuff, right? Like they, they bait and switch you. You know, they act like they love all these things and they pretend to be something they're not. And then they get in the relationship and they were like, oh, I don't like sex, or I don't like this, or I don't like dancing, and they basically
Right.
bait and switch because they're trying to
That's
lure him
it.
in. So they're being a disingenuous version of themselves.
That's
the guy
right.
gets in, he's like, well, this isn't what I signed up for, right? So that's what, and other than the crazy factor, right? So the people who just are damn crazy, you know, the key to your car, crazy people, right? So,
Right. So you were alluding to the normal man. So a crazy guy, to based off your definition, is the one who fakes it. So I was told by one of my girlfriend's husband, she said, guys will fake it for good. The average guy will fake it for 3 months. He'll play along, pretend that he's all good, like an on board, and then the true crazy comes out after 3 months. He said the really, really good ones can hold out and fake you for 6 months.
but they'll always come through.
Is that true?
we're
Being a man, is that what happens?
No, but I think we're set out to, we want to court and we want you to see the best of us. And by the way, for ladies out there too, a man is going to fuck up because we're flawed by nature because we're men. There's a reason why God let women have children and not us, because there would be no children alive, right? So you are the stronger species, intellectual capacity wise. We know that you learn faster retention. So we know all the scientific statistics behind, right, all that. But that's a whole other topic. But no,
ladies and gentlemen,
a man will, unless he finds someone who makes it, it's not her job, but if he feels safe in a place where he can be vulnerable, then he's more likely to show signs of his vulnerability. But if he feels like he's going to be judged on being vulnerable, then he's probably not. He's going to fake it for 6 months. I think the best way, the relationships is a lot better if we probably should have learned this when we were like 17, is just be who you are and let the cards. Because if not, we just waste 6 months. And I mean, if we were to add up every dinner that you paid for, that I paid for, date night, movie night, at the Dollar Theater at the Huntridge when I was 17, I'd have a lot more money. I'm sure the hell be a lot more happier. But but yeah, if a man feels safe and he can be vulnerable, then he'll be less likely to run and he'll get more of that. But couples start off disingenuous. Not disingenuous, I don't want to say that, but they start off, they only show you the good parts. The big part for me is that people will lie about the things that are important, their boundaries.
Yeah.
They will lie and say, maybe the girl says something that bothers him and he'll pretend he didn't hear it, didn't care. She'll pretend she likes dancing when she doesn't really like dancing, doesn't give a shit about dancing.
Right.
I don't watch football, but I'd probably pretend if I like somebody that I liked football, and because if not, then I'm not masculine, I don't like football. So, just say I don't like football. So, we waste too much time just not being our true, authentic self.
Right.
But
very well
that's
said.
one reason, but the other reason is just more personal with people and the way they grew up. They run,
So one last takeaway then, or question. You said that a man needs to feel vulnerable or feel safe to feel vulnerable and share and open. So how does a woman, in your opinion, create a safe space for a man?
I'll give you a real example.
Sure,
Okay, so let's assume I'm on a date and I go to the bar with someone I'm dating. Now, this is a real thing for me. One of my pet peeves is if you're with somebody and you're out with somebody and say you're on a date or whatever the case might be, and you go to the bathroom, you come back and someone's sitting in your seat. Like, your person should be like, that's my man's seat, right? Like, that's a real thing. That really pisses me off. That's one of my pet peeves. Like, not that I'm going to do violence, but let's use an example of that or anything else. A fight, get in a fight and he calls you a name, whatever. It's very easy for us to judge that situation and go, that guy's crazy. I'm getting the fuck out. This is a relationship's going to be doomed from the get-go. It's harder for someone to take back and ask perspective and go, why did he respond that way? What was it about the fact that that guy was sitting in that seat that made him lose his shit and blow up when we got in this big fight? And to sit down and go, hey, you seem upset. Why did that bother you? I understand the whole context of it, but why did it bother you? And you're going to pull back and ask for, the 8 layers of why. By the time you get to 8 questions, you're going to figure out exactly what it is. And it could just be they feel insecure, or it could just they feel it's disrespectful, or maybe they had an ex-girlfriend that when they left, somebody was sitting at the bar talking. Whatever it is, you're going to find out. That's an example where he's expecting you to judge him and go, you're fucking crazy. I'm out of here. And it's so quickly, we make one mistake in a relationship early on, and then they're like, oh, he's trouble or she's trouble. No, they're just human and they're flawed. So that's an example. Don't use the barstool example. I'm just saying where a man screws up and does something wrong or says something, and it's very quick to judge them versus showing up, nurturing and loving, and if you truly care, just say, explore why. Why does that bother you so much? Could just be they're just insecure, whatever the case might be. But that's an example of how they can
So being genuinely
just being
interested
being nurturing
in,
and trying to understand.
Okay, genuinely being interested in your challenges and creating a space where you can share without judgment, basically.
Everybody has a great relationship when we're going to STK Steakhouse.
Yeah.
You're spending $300 and everybody's having a great time drinking, and then but the moment you get in a fight, your first fight, and you see truly how strong that relationship is and how both parties work to try to make it better.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. All right. I think that is all for today. Thank you so much, John
Thank you, Dr. Leslie.
Valentine,
Appreciate
for
it.
being on the show and talking about all these wonderful topics. We got some really great stuff in today. We have much, much more we need to talk about. We'll have you back soon.
Can't wait to talk about your charity work and then your grassroots efforts of gaining awareness. I appreciate all the work you're doing in that space with the mental illness and mental health topics. It's great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to
so
hold
much.
myself accountable not to miss any appointments this week because of you. So thank you.
In my name, you will not miss any of them. Is that right?
That is correct. I take full accountability for that.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next time.